What is up? Welcome back to Hear Me Out Sports. We're here in week 2, and man, week 1 was wild. Starting off with that Thursday night game, there were so many turnovers, so I'm going to just break it to you here first now in our week 1 review. QBs, we were just shy of 60% correct, but I mean, that had some huge losses. To go with the misses that we had, I mean, Carson Wentz blew up. People are thinking that he might continue to blow up, so he's been drafted. His drafting stock has risen significantly. But then you had people like Aaron Rodgers who just did not perform. You had Dak Prescott, who was very low on the list as well, but that's because of an injury, and he's going to be out for a little bit now. So, I mean, where do you go from there? Are you going to, I guess in those double quarterback leagues, it's going to be difficult. Going with the hits, though, I mean, we called the Baker Mayfield, and I think he's going to continue to break this 19-point threshold that we have in these PPR leagues, at least. But Baker Mayfield, he's going to be right around that for the time being, I think. There is room for improvement. I think he has good receivers, and he can continue to do well. Kirk Cousins, and we also include on that list just because another one we called who, you know, maybe it wasn't very sure if he would make that threshold, but he made it there. And Jalen Hurts, just because we hyped him up so much, and man, he had a great game. He didn't have too many options. The Lions were locking down a lot of his receivers, but he ended up running, and he had 70-plus yards running, which was great. Those close calls, though, let's keep in mind, Baker Mayfield barely made it. Kirk Cousins barely made it. And Ryan Tannehill, he kind of was right around that threshold, too. So close calls is where we're around that 19-point threshold. But with week 1 out of the way, we're going to not panic. We're not going to overreact, but we are going to give you our starts and sits for quarterbacks. So without further ado, let's jump into Thursday night football. We're going with the Los Angeles Chargers versus the Kansas City Chiefs. Both of these guys are starts. I mean, there's not much to it. Justin Herbert is just very consistent. This right here is my position rivalry of the week. Each week I'm going to be bringing you a position rivalry. And pretty much what constitutes a position rivalry, it's two semi-evenly matched quarterbacks. I think they're very good, and I think that Patrick Mahomes is going to come away with more points between the two of them. But I think they both have targets, they both have a good team, and they can really work the ball in a pass offense. So I've got both of these guys as starts. I don't think I need to say more. I mean, Patrick Mahomes kind of killed it last week. Continue to start him. So moving on now to Sunday, we've got the Miami Dolphins and we have the Baltimore Ravens. Tua, I'm going to continue to start him. He broke our threshold. We were good with, or he was right around there actually, and we're good with him though. As long as he can get into the hands of his receivers, I think he can make some stuff happen. Lamar Jackson, on the other hand, I am a little bit worried with his receivers in this one. Dolphins defense is something to be concerned about. And listen, I just think the reason I have him as a start is essentially because he can run on his feet. So it's less of a concern. He did have terrible pass percentage, but he still was able to kind of prove himself through the air because he didn't rush that much last game. So we're going to continue to have him as a start. Moving on to the New York Jets versus the Cleveland Browns. We've got Joe Flacco and Jacoby Brissett, and I think that they are closely matched quarterbacks as well. And for that reason, I'm sitting them both. I think both of these teams have some decent pass defense according to week 1, where the Jets allowed only 211 yards and the Browns allowed 207. And the Browns are just a run-heavy offense right now. So because of that, we're going to bench Jacoby Brissett, and I'm not going to think too much about it. Now moving on to Washington Commanders versus the Detroit Lions. And I'm going to start here by saying the Detroit Lions offense kind of impressed me. Now they're in the second half of the first quarter, moving into the second quarter. It was hard to watch, I'm not going to lie. I mean, they had three and outs, if I remember right, all right back after back. And after that, though, Jared Goff seemed to find his rhythm. They got the running game established, which opened up some passes as well downfield. So I think that because of that, I'm going to start Jared Goff. On the other hand, you have Carson Wentz. So the reason I have him as a sit is because I think Detroit had an all right pass defense. They're going to be pressuring Wentz a lot more. They pressured the Eagles a lot, but Jalen Hurts was just able to take it on the ground, and Carson Wentz does not have that same ability to buy that time. So I think because of that, he's going to be under pressure. He's going to be rushing stuff, which could result in turnovers. and also just could result in bad passes in general. So because of that, I'm going to sit him this time. Now moving on to the Indianapolis Colts versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. We've got Matt Ryan. I've got him as a start. It was a rough patch for that first game, but I'm not going to think too much about it. Jaguars have a bottom 3 pass defense, allowing over 300 yards in that week 1 game. And I think just Matt Ryan, he posted 50 attempts, and that is ridiculous. And he still got 352 yards. So, I mean, really good stats. Even though he didn't break our threshold, he had really good stats. And as long as he can come away with 1 touchdown, which isn't asking too much against a Jacksonville defense, he's easily going to break that threshold. So I'm starting him again. Moving on, though, to Trevor Lawrence. I've got him benched because I think Colts defense is enough to give him a little bit of trouble, especially with the receivers he has there. I'm not going to think too much on him either, and until he can prove himself, he's going to stay in that sit column. Now we've got Tampa Bay Buccaneers versus the Saints, and here Tom Brady, a little bit of concern. He didn't score super high points, but we're going to keep him in there. Despite him having 1 less receiver to go to, we've still got some other options like Julio Jones and even Leonard Fournette out of the backfield. So I say start him again. If he fails you again, let's back it up, reevaluate, and see what we're bringing to the table. Jameis Winston, he's in the opposite column where he did break our threshold, but I still have him as a bench. I just think that this time around, they're not playing the Falcons. I think the Buccaneers defense is going to give him a lot more trouble, and because of that, I think that he's not going to have the same success as he had last week. So now we've got the Carolina Panthers versus the Giants. We've got Baker Mayfield, and he was a close call, but he did break the threshold last week. And I think that that was kind of a rubbish game in general. There were some bad calls. There was a lot of different stuff going on, I guess, in that game. So going now to the Giants, I think that he's got some chance to get that. I guess he has that chance now that he has a game under his belt. He's found some targets that he likes. I believe Baker can find his stride, and he can use those targets he has in DJ Moore and in Robbie Anderson. He found a target he liked in Robbie Anderson, and because of that, I think splitting the ball enough, especially including Christian McCaffrey in that is going to make it harder to defend against the pass. The Panthers, on the other hand, their defense is the number 2 pass defense, allowing only 138 yards. Carolina's defense has actually been semi-alright recently. So I'm going to bench Daniel Jones. I just have no faith in him. He hasn't proven himself. He continues to not prove himself, and I think he will not prove himself. So I've got him in the sit column. Now at New England versus Pittsburgh, we've got Mac Jones. I have him on the bench. It was lackluster. I know he has the back spasms, which is a concern. It may limit his deep ball ability just because when you're hurt, I mean, you're not going to be performing at an elite level, so sometimes you got to limit yourself. So that's going to dial him back in. And Pittsburgh, listen, he is kind of a fringe, though, for Mac Jones because Pittsburgh, they did allow almost 300 yards in week 1. So that's a bit of upside, I guess, for Mac Jones. But moving on to Mitch Trubisky, man, low ceiling. I think that he's going to need a lot to get those 19-plus point games, and they're going to need to be big plays. I just don't think he has that. He averaged a whopping 5.1 yards per pass attempt, which is not impressive at all. So I am keeping him benched. There's not much to it. Now we've got Los Angeles Rams hosting the Atlanta Falcons. Marcus Mariota, another guy who actually did semi-alright, but I don't think he's going to, be facing the same team he had in week 1. The Rams have a much better defense, despite what you might think from last week's games. I think that they're going to be able to give him enough of a challenge that he's not going to break 19 points. Matthew Stafford, on the other hand, man, he did not look great, and we talked about this in a previous video. Is there concern with his elbow? We don't think so. I think he's going to be able to find his targets, get his groove down, and I think that was just one of those one-off games that just looked terrible. Everything went wrong. So many turnovers on both sides, and it was just a very weird game all around. So keep Matthew Stafford in the start column. You probably spent a decent draft pick on him, so keep him there. Now let's go over to San Francisco, where we can see the Seahawks versus the 49ers. Geno Smith, man, he was very impressive in his week 1 game. Did a lot better, and on a consistent basis throughout the entire game, all 4 quarters, than anyone thought that he was probably going to do. So I kind of like Geno Smith. That being said, though, I am going to sit him just because I don't think they have the team that they need in order for him to perform well. I also think that his hype just might be built because he is one of these guys who you expected to suck, and he happened to perform in a very average way, and that led to, some hype. Now, San Francisco, on the other hand, Trey Lance, I'm going to give him a start. Terrible week 1 stats, but they're playing in some marshlands, so I'm not going to, think too much about that. I think it was ridiculous in the first place, so we're going to move on now to Cincinnati Bengals versus the Dallas Cowboys. Joe Burrow is almost always going to be a start. That's literally all there is to it. He broke 22 points, which was awesome, and that's with him throwing 4 interceptions and having 2 fumbles. So despite those negative points, he still managed to come out over 20 points, which is really good. I don't foresee him repeating that and having 4 interceptions and 2 fumbles, so that just means that his ceiling is all the higher. Now, on the other hand, Dallas Cowboys, with that injury going down, Cooper Rush stepping in, I guess, listen, if you're struggling and you need something, sure, put him in, but they don't have much. CeeDee Lamb is their receiver 1, but he's kind of just the only one. Dalton Schultz, though, he's a very good receiver 2/1B, but with a guy promoted from the practice squad just recently, and in a, run threat offense with Ezekiel Elliott, we're going to keep Cooper Rush benched here. Moving on to Houston Texans, Davis Mills had a great game, but I think it's big play dependent, so we're going to keep him benched. And Denver Broncos, man, they looked horrible. That's all I can say is I was not impressed. I've never been a huge fan of Russell Wilson, but that being said, because he has a game under his belt, and I think that there's going to be, less of a crowd influence maybe, and there's some delay of games. Lots go into it, but I'm going to start him again. And if he sucks, then week 3 I'll come back and I might bench him because I don't have huge faith in him. I think his team needs to do a lot to make him look good. But I think that it is possible for them to do that. Now going to Arizona Cardinals versus the Las Vegas Raiders. Who else was just not impressed at all by the Cardinals? Because I think just about everybody. Now, Kyler was efficient with 2 touchdowns, no turnovers, and almost 65% completion rate. And the Raiders gave up 279 yards in their first game. Now, that was to the Chargers, so let's keep that, under wraps as far as, listen, they played a good team, so yeah, they allow a lot of yards. But Kyler Murray has some targets, and Kyler Murray is a threat himself, both on the ground and the air, that I think that they are a threat as well, and they could be getting close to that 250, 300-yard game. Now, Carr, on the other hand, I'm starting him again, still performed well despite pressure. But Cardinals had no sacks, so he's going to have more time in the pocket. He's going to have some better outcomes on his end because he has more time. Just get it into the hands of Devontae Adams, and that's all you really have to do. Now we got the Chicago Bears versus the Green Bay Packers, and I'm going to tell you, there's 2 reasons I'm starting Aaron Rodgers, and it's not because of his skill, and it's not because of the team that's around him. It's because it's a home game, and it's because it's a division rivalry. So I'm going to start him literally just for that reason. Aaron Rodgers, he's difficult because he needs to kind of build that rapport with some of his teammates, which I will cover actually tight ends. But he needs to build that rapport with some receivers and stuff before he fully trusts them. And right now there's been no one who's really truly proven themselves. So I think it's going to be rough for the next couple games. But I've got him in the start column 1 more week. Well, we see what he does. Justin Fields, again, hard to judge from the week 1 game because he only had 17 pass attempts, but it's because they were playing in a hurricane type weather. So with that being said, I'm sitting him just because I still don't trust his offensive line, but I am excited to see what he does. I think he's going to be one of those fringe people, and I think it is possible for him to break 19 points, but we're going to have to see. Now we go over to Buffalo where we've got the Titans versus the Bills. Josh Allen, automatic start, so I'll just get that out of the way. Tannehill, on the other hand, he's really missing A.J. Brown, which Jalen Hurts is really loving over there. But it's going to be tough because this Bills defense is no joke. Like, they put up a fight, had a lot of turnovers, and they looked good. So Ryan Tannehill, I'm going to bench for that reason. I mean, they do revolve around the running backs a lot, and I think if they incorporate the running backs like they did this last week and give them some passes. And if he can get a touchdown under his belt, he's going to be a fringe player as well. But I've got him sat. Now let's go over to Philadelphia with the Vikings versus the Eagles. These are going to be 2 starts for me. Kirk Cousins, he looked good. He was facing a lot of blitzing he will be facing a lot of blitzing Eagles defense. And with targets like Justin Jefferson and Dalvin Cook, I don't think he's going to need to worry too much about it. He'll have both that short and long option, where if the blitz is coming, a quick swing route or a quick dump, a quick screen to Dalvin Cook will be just fine. Jalen Hurts, despite the tough defense he faced last week, he was able to find some chemistry with A.J. Brown, and he was able to get 70-plus rushing yards, which is ridiculous. I mean, there's a touchdown under his belt, essentially. But yeah, with A.J. Brown, 13 targets his way, and he caught 10 of them. And there's some decent yardage on some of those. So we got him as a start because there's some big play potential there as well. And with that, we're going to wrap it up. I'm going to just tell you again, like always, like, comment, subscribe, and let us know what you think of our picks. If you got any disputes, hit us up and we will respond to you. DM us and tune in each week to each of our videos, and you will have a chance to win some money. It's coming your way. And listen, we're going to start putting out stuff now. So without further ado, that is Jace from Hear Me Out Sports and logging off.